Hey everybody, it's Friday, June the 21st, 2024, and this is How to Restart a Church, a spin-off podcast where I, Pastor Trey Comstock, my friend and colleague, Pastor Emily Larson, and often cool friends doing cool things, talk about how to make church happen and how to make church happen again. This week, we have with us a very special guest. We have Reverend Matt Stout of Garden City United Methodist Church in the South Georgia Annual Conference. We talked about his project a couple of weeks ago, and it was, he is a tabletop role-playing person, and he has created a kind of Fresh Expressions, a sacred community built around a Dungeons & Dragons game at the local game store. And so we wanted to bring him on and hear about this. And so, Matt, I've given the very basic description. If you want to talk to us, what is this thing that you are doing? And how would you describe it?
Well, thanks so much for having me on, Trey and Emily. So grateful that you guys have invited me on this podcast. So Game Church really sprung out of a desire, like United Methodist inside baseball stuff. My area in South Georgia was hit so hard by disaffiliations and all that kind of stuff. And so our conference said, we're going to do everything. We're gonna just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. No, there is no you don't have to do a study. Let's just bring people to Jesus. We're tired of crying about who we're losing. We're gonna just start bringing people in. And so that's what they did. And we had a cultivator. Our conference has certain people that are on conference staff to cultivate these new kinds of ministries. And he's my buddy. His name's Matt Waldron. And he said, I know that you are into tabletop gaming. Would you be interested in moving this into like a fresh expression? And this is something I've thought about for years. I've often thought that tabletop gaming would be a great way to get people connected to Jesus. My only thought was nobody's going to say yes to this. They're just going to think I'm trying to get away with
right. Yeah.
Doing game stuff on work time. And so when they approached me about it, I was like, heck yeah.
Yeah.
And so I've got a friend in the next county over. He is an Episcopal priest who is also really into tabletop gaming and D&D. And so we got together and collaborated with this, me, Matt Waldron, and Father David Rose. And we just said, let's just see what happens. And so our vision for it is really to connect lonely people to a spiritual community and to foster spiritual relationships around the table. And there's something, I don't know, there's something great about table fellowship in a different way. We talk about the table a lot, especially in United Methodist circles. And this is a different kind of table, but I think there's something special that happens at that table, in which kind of mirrors some of the other ways we talk about table. You can play D&D online, but it's not the same as being at the table in person with your people.
No. For those who, I think certainly some of the folks listening to this have done some tabletop role playing. For those who haven't, the way it is a game, but it's a game structured to be a collaborative storytelling medium, right? And so there is an inherently collaborative and connective piece of D&D, even if you find yourself, with different goals than other players at the table, or certainly different goals than the, game master or dungeon master, right? Even in that, it is a collaborative art. It is more akin to improv and theater than it is strictly to, we are following the rules of a game. And so I wonder if there is something uniquely about that collaborative storytelling that then lends itself well to a kind of table fellowship.
I do think that is the case. And I appreciate you saying that. I think that is right. For me, one of the things that, as a lifelong nerd and introvert, one of the things that helps me is to connect with other people is games. If I just go to an event and I'm just expected to mingle and to talk to people, I am so awkward at it. Well, what I end up doing is I just follow my wife around like a kid and just talk to whoever she talks to. But if she's not around, or if I don't have an extrovert to glom onto, I'm just lost. But if someone brings out a deck of cards and says, "Anybody want to play spades?" and I have that, then I can socialize around that. There's something about the structure of a game, the structure of knowing exactly what my role is and exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right now is, that helps me to connect with people. And while you're shuffling cards, you end up talking about whatever, but I'm not having to come up with a connection point from whole cloth. And so that's the kind of thing I'm looking.
Yeah, so D&D does the job of setting the scene, right? It sets the structure of, okay, this is the world that we are in. And so you are not like, oh my God, what am I going to talk about? It is, okay, here is the challenge before us. We are setting off on this kind of adventure. Now all I'm doing is I'm thinking, how do I engage with this adventure? Which is a much lower barrier of kind of mental and emotional effort than just, okay, for people who don't know each other, have a conversation.
Yeah, that's right. Tell me what's going on in your life. Let's get deep. That's not how I operate, and that's not how a lot of people operate. And so I think that just greases the wheels for spiritual relationships and spiritual friendships that come out of that. And that's how it's working with our group. And so we meet every other Thursday. What we do is we kind of follow the Fresh Expressions formula. We've identified the person of peace. It's the guy at the game store. He owns the Savannah Lion Games. Shout out to Savannah Lion Games in Pooler if you're ever there. They're great. Nice. The owner's name's Jeremy, and I've been going there for years to play tabletop role-playing games. I got really into the X-Wing miniatures game and played that for a long time there. And so I knew him. I'm scared to think about how much money I've spent at his store, actually. Let's not talk about that.
But a fair amount, right?
Yeah. And so, he knows me. And so we... I said, hey, I'm doing this Bible study I'm looking at starting this Fresh Expression. Are you cool if I do this at your store? And he said, yeah, man, I know you. I said, we're not going to be street preaching. I'm not going to, bring in a sound system and tell people they're going to hell. We're just going to have conversations around the table as we play. And so he said, oh yeah, that's fine. I trust you. And so that's what we do. We meet at the store around one of the gaming tables. There's always another group of people that are at the next table, and I know that they hear it every week too, and it's kind of fun. We have a Jesus story every week, just talking about, just either me or Father David or my other buddy Matt will bring one of these Jesus stories, and then we share prayer requests. And really, the prayer request time is where all the action is. It is what has really developed us. And we're talking about how our lives are going, how our weeks are going, where we've seen God at work, where we need to see God at work, and we're connecting the things that are going on in our everyday lives to our spirituality in that time. And that probably takes the first 20 minutes, 20 or 30 minutes of the time together. And at first it was like pulling teeth to get people to participate in this part. They're here for the D&D, so we're
sure. Yeah.
But there have been weeks where I have been ready to move on. I'm like, okay, let's close this portion of the time and we'll move on to the game. And then someone else will be like, no, but what about this? Like, what about this other thing? And then there'll be another round of like Bible and spiritual, and so like it has been the participants have really kind of taken the ball on the spiritual like aspect of it and really run with it. And there are some folks that are just there for the game. They don't really care about the other part, but they're respectful and they listen. And the folks that participate really well. And I'm not trying to push people to participate more. I mean, I just think the fact that they're there and the fact that they're listening and the fact that like they're a part of this community is what is important. And we have a Discord that we meet, so we're even between sessions, when stuff happens, when we want to talk about life or the game.
Okay, so there is that kind of ongoing connection as well.
Oh, yeah. So we're pretty, we're not like the most active Discord ever, but we're in there a few times a week talking.
I am super curious because so many of our fresh expressions that you hear about or that you talk about will be like someone's sewing circle or someone's pre-existing group of interest, a yoga class or a D&D group that was already pre-existing. And then they try to infuse some Jesus time into it, right? They try to bring the gospel into it and make it a fresh expression. But the way that you started this one sounds very intentional with bringing in Father David and your friend Matt. So as y'all were planning this and starting this venture, was there something that you did that you would recommend doing that you would, let other people know about would be a good practice when starting something new like this?
Sure. I mean, I think you kind of have to get a critical mass of people out to start. You don't want to have to wonder, like, are people going to show up today? And so I think that is one of the other key parts of this is I have a friend, Robert, who did not go to church. I don't think he still goes to church anywhere. He had been to church in the past, kind of got burned, kind of got hurt, and was not connected in any kind of faith community. And but we played X-Wing together. And he had told me that he was looking for some kind of like small group, some kind of spiritual thing. I was like, well, hey, I think we're fixing to start this game church. And he was all in. He was our first DM. Yeah. I took over as DM after a while. He had some health issues. And so I took him over as DM. But he came and he brought his 18-year-old son. And so, we had me, Matt, Father David, Robert, and Robert's son. So like we had that five people to start out with, and that way, every week we had a pretty
you're not a doable. You're not D&D starting party. Out as like, hey, right? Well, yeah. So we had a fresh expression in a pub, and one of the things that made it work is like there was enough of that starter set of okay. It feels really weird to be the first person to join a group. It does not feel really weird to be the fifth person. It feels less weird to be the fifth person to join a group. And so to have that, that critical mass of, hey, this game can happen. If there are other players this game, fantastic. If there are not other players this game, we can still have this game. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. And the first few months, it really kind of was just the five of us. We had a couple more people that would come and go. We had one kid that was like really busy, and so he would come, but he would like miss like 3 sessions in a row, and then, so it was like we never knew if he was going to be there or not. But since then, it's really grown, and so we got into the Savannah Dungeons and Dragons Facebook group, and just said, "Hey, we're looking for players." One of the other things that has really been a big value to us, especially in the D&D space, is we do not want to bait and switch people. We don't want to say, come join our D&D group, and then when you get there, we say, surprise, it's a Bible study. That's
surprise,
not,
Jesus.
Yeah, that's not one of our values. We definitely want to value honesty and being upfront and transparency about this. And so, and it's kind of a hard thing, because a lot of people in the D&D space are not open to faith expressions. And so, you get on the Facebook page and people are like, why are you doing this? And also a lot of Christians don't represent themselves well in those kind of spaces. They are manipulative or heavy-handed about proselytizing and that kind of stuff. And so trying to thread that needle of like, hey, I'm not trying to proselytize you.
Yeah. But especially the D&D community, I think there's a lot of baggage too from the early days of Dungeons and Dragons where, you know, a certain strain of Christianity decided that this was from the devil and that D&D was devil worshipping and, parents don't let your, kids play Dungeons and Dragons because they're going to go to hell or whatever, right? Like, I mean, that baggage, I know, there's what's the book? There's a biography of Dungeons and Dragons and the creators of it. And I read it a few years back. I guess that's before my, born in 86. And so that was happening when I was a tiny child, but that's before my time. And I know some of that, like we have baggage in the D&D community in the way that we have baggage in a lot of other communities.
We got burned by that satanic panic, didn't we? I remember getting that.
Oh yeah. A lot of cool stuff did.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, so you said like, hey, you had this kind of core 5 and that was really key. And then you've had other folks kind of now glomming on, being a part. Where are those folks coming from? Is it folks finding you on the Facebook page? Is it folks in the game store? Is it a little bit of both? Like what's your sense of where those additional folks are
so
from?
I would say we probably have 10 or 12 folks coming now, including me, Matt, and David. And so, we probably have like nine other folks. And it has been a great combination. Some people have been inviting friends. Robert invited one of his friends from work that comes a lot now. We've had several people come on from the Facebook. They saw the Savannah Lion Facebook, and we did the Savannah D&D Discord and kind of put the word out in there. And that's how they heard about it. We do have one player that played, I think, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or some kind of card game at the store, and their card game time ended right when ours began, and so he was always just kind of milling around, and just
so
he came a couple times, and so he said, could I join? And we were like, of course we can join. Now, I don't know how much folks know about D&D, but 9 people is a huge party. It's a little bit, it works in Lord of the Rings, but it does not work in D&D quite as well. And so we are at the point where we're going to have to, and not everybody comes every week, right? There's a lot of people that miss for whatever reason every time.
Right.
But we're getting to the point where we're going to have to split into 2 parties, I think. So we're either going to have to have 2 DMs and 2 tables, or we're going to have to go to meeting every Thursday and then just have one party meet on the first and third Thursday, one party meet on the second and fourth Thursday, or something like that. So we're kind of looking at how we can grow in that way without having an unmanageable party.
Well, I think that's fascinating. One of the conversations you often have around any kind of small group, and this is a very different expression of a small group, but it's a small group, is like, oh, it gets so big, it gets so unmanageable, right? Like, and so like D&D has like a natural check mechanism of, at some point, the game just doesn't work with so many people. I did for about a year and a half, did a Blades in the Dark game with a bunch of our young adults at a church we served. And this was inside the church. This was more like the young adults just were not connecting with the Bible study curriculum. Go figure, whatever. And I'm better at Blades in the Dark than I am at Dungeons and Dragons. And Blades in the Dark has a little lower barrier to entry of like, if you think you know tabletop role playing, but you don't actually know it, like this is just a little bit of an easier system. At least in my own experiences. But what I would do is I would have a party of 4 player characters, and then however many folks were there, you just, you two are teaming you two are working together to run this character. You two are working together to run this character. That was my way around it. But I think, splitting into a couple of parties, or even if it is like, there is also a whole genre, and, I listen to several podcasts that are people playing tabletop role playing. I wonder if also like, okay, you can come every week. This week's you're going to play. On this week's you're going to be the audience. It's so, that everyone can be a part of it.
And that's really balancing the game and the church. Like, part of the game is not everybody can
exactly
all the time, but the church is, you are welcome, you are here, you're one of us, no matter what. And so just really balancing that out has been kind of a challenge.
I also wonder, like, if I think in the future of this, if what we need to do, we who are, tabletop interested, church people, is write our own game. Right?
Yes.
Write that, like, whether it is another take on Dungeons Dragons 5e or whatever, like, or just are totally like a rule set that's easy enough to pick up that has that baked in flexibility. I've done a lot of church theater, and I end up writing my own stuff like 95% of the time, because I don't know if I'm going to have the right number of characters for this piece or this piece. And I don't even know when I'm like creating this idea how many folks I'm going to have to play the characters. So I have ended up writing my own, church theater pieces more often than not, for similar reasons of, like, you want everyone to be included. You want to be able to tailor make it to the people you have in front of you, so that everyone feels included, so that you can make this structured thing happen. But yeah, D&D, these rules-based systems, they have a vision for how these parties are going to be, and we don't always fit that vision.
And part of it is like D&D has the name recognition. Like, people know what to expect when they come into D&D. Yeah. If you try to make your own thing, I wonder if people would lose interest. That's what I would worry about. The other thing that people have asked me about this is if, like, the campaign itself is overtly Christian, or if I'm trying to deal with, like, if I'm writing a Christian D&D adventure. And
interesting,
I am not. I've told this on another show that I was on. My guiding light on this is Hank Hill from King of the Hill, on the episode where Bobby, like, joins the Christian youth group or whatever, and he goes to the rock and roll guy and he says, "You're not making Christianity better, you're making rock and roll worse." And so I don't want to try to make Christianity better by making D&D worse.
Important temptation resisted, right?
Right.
That, you can bake into a campaign questions, all campaigns have questions of, like, morality and questions of the choices you make. It's all about making choices. But to, focus on the thing that well is how to make it good as D&D. And that D&D is the thing that gives us the structure to build relationships. It doesn't itself have to be the teaching mechanism.
That's right. I
think that makes a ton of sense.
That's really our philosophy on it.
So if you talked a little bit about, like, you may have to split into two more games. If you think about, like, you've been doing this for a while, you've got kind of a critical mass going. What do you think of as you cast forward? Like, what do you think of the next stage of this ministry? Is it moving it every week to accommodate more folks? Is it, working with more game stores? Like, what is your vision for kind of, you've got Game Church, you've really, I think, cracked a code on how to do it. What do you think of as kind of stage 2, stage 3 of this?
Yeah, back when I was in college, cell group was like the big buzzword for small group ministries, and I kind of see it maybe working a little bit like a cell group back 20 years ago when they were doing that. In that, once your party kind of reaches a critical mass, you break into two parties, and I would be willing to explore any of those options you mentioned. Like, maybe there's people that would love to play but can't make it out on Thursday. Maybe we hop to a different night of the week and have, meet another night of the week with that other group. Maybe we do pick a store across town that it would be easier for other people to meet at. So, right now we are just worried about, I think our plan for the immediate future is to move into every Thursdays in the same place at the same time. And that way, no matter what week you're on, there's some game church happening, and then have two parties meet on alternating weeks. And then if it grows beyond that, which I would love to see it grow beyond that, I would love to have maybe a third party meet, with a different, I could not, I don't have time to be involved in all that myself. So I would love for this to grow beyond me, well, beyond what me and David and Matt could handle. But, I would love to see maybe a third party meet on a different night at a different store and kind of grow it beyond that. So I think cell group is the model that we're kind of looking at as a growth strategy.
Well, and that's something we talked about on the show last week, was that at the heart of the Fresh Expressions idea is lay leadership, right? That it's not supposed to be entirely pastor driven. And so I think the cell, like, finding the next another DM that is not the pastor, because we are all incredibly limited on our time and our availability. And at some point, like, church can't take over every evening of our lives. As someone who used to do some sort of discipleship thing 4 nights a week, like, I'll tell you, that will eat you up and spit you out. And so I think, I think that makes a ton of sense. My other question is, we all live and work in church world. And so I think it's wonderful to hear these, like, very positive out of your conference, like, conference leadership is like, hey, you should do this. What have the conversations been internal to the congregation where you serve? Like, how have you talked to those stakeholders about what is Game Church, what it means for them, how, clear, what I didn't hear in your goals, which I think makes a lot of sense, but I want to highlight that I didn't hear in your goals is, and then we have a Game Church at the church, right? Like, that is still about this thing physically beyond the church. Like, how have you talked to your folks on the church side about Game Church, and what have those conversations been like?
I've barely done that. I've done a really bad job of it when I have. So when we first started doing it, I kind of made an announcement like, hey, pray about this. This is something new that I'm doing, that we're doing. And so people kind of asked me about it, and I was like, yeah, that's, Dungeons and Dragons. And they were like, okay, have fun. And that's about it. Like, if they meet someone or know someone that is a nerd, then they kind of say, hey, this person might be interested in Game Church, and then they will, like, forward that to me. But I have not done a great job of engaging my congregation about this. As far as they know, it's just kind of a hobby that I have and another thing that I do.
In some ways, like, the two things don't necessarily have to, that they're related. And, as time goes on, other points of connection may naturally arise. But part of the Fresh Expression, part of it being this thing that is out in the community with these kind of much more nebulous goals of, let's build community, let's build points of connection, let's tell a Jesus story and see how people resonate, that it is this much more open-ended thing that, those two kinds of ministry do not necessarily lend themselves to interaction, nor need to. Well, thank you very much, Matt, for being on the show. Is there something you want to plug, promote? If someone wants to join, if someone is listening to this and is in the Savannah area and wants to join Game Church, like, how do they do that?
Sure. So, you can join our Discord. I think that's the easiest way. I guess if you search Game Church on Discord, it'll get you in there, and it should be an open thing. I don't think you need to be invited. So that's the only thing. I will say one of our a local journalist picked us up and wrote a piece about it that's in this month's Sojourner magazine. So if you want to go to the Sojourner website or look at the magazine, if you get a subscription,
nice.
You can read a little more about Game Church and Sojourner. And see a really terrible picture of me. I'm going to have to yell at Rob,
that's awesome.
the guy who wrote it up, because it is the most unflattering picture I've ever taken.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Know that feeling well. If you listening at home have your stories of fresh expressions or ways or places you wish the church were, email us, thegoodnessofgodpod@gmail.com. That is thegoodnessofgodpod@gmail.com. This and everything else we do here in the Media Lab is supported by a generous Innovators Grant by the Texas Annual Conference, the United Methodist Church. If you want to support us, like, comment, subscribe, share, leave us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcast. If you are interested in more of what we are doing, there is a lot going on even now. If those of you watching the video can tell, I am not in my usual studio, and weirdly Emily is. Even when things are crazy, there's a lot going on. It is Servants Now on just about everything, on YouTube, on Facebook, on the web, servantsnow.org, on TikTok. If you're looking for us, you can find us at Servants Now somewhere. And go in peace to love and serve the Lord. We'll see you next time.